Good morning. I have no idea what I'm doing. I wanted to record this last night, but I ate 2 cheeseburgers after the movie, and I fell asleep. So, I slept on my thoughts. I'm awake now. I'm ready to go. And last night, I saw Across the Spider-Verse. Now, just for some context, if you don't know me, I'm basically one of those guys who saw Spider-Man 2002 as a kid and was like, yep, I'm gonna make this my personality for the rest of my life. To me, he's absolutely one of the greatest fictional characters ever created. You know, everybody knows that, but in particular, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse from 2018 is probably the perfect Spider-Man movie. Stan Lee always wanted to have Spider-Man wearing a mask. That way, anybody could put themselves in that costume. And Into the Spider-Verse proved that anybody could wear that costume no matter what. Now, I haven't read a lot of Miles Morales' recent comics, but I have read his original run written by Brian Michael Bendis, and it is interesting, to say the least. It makes some interesting choices. Up until Spider-Verse, they didn't really know quite where Miles fit in the grand scheme of things, especially with the whole Secret Wars thing and bringing him over from the Ultimate Universe. It's complicated. It's messy comic book gobbledygook, but basically what I'm trying to say is that 2018 was a really, really good year for Miles. Not only was he reintroduced in the video game from 2018, and that version of him is okay. He's very kind of standard milquetoast Miles, but the movie in particular, it's like they finally took all of the best parts from his comic book and cartoon appearances, and they put it together into one fantastic package. And yes, even after seeing Across the Spider-Verse, I still think Into the Spider-Verse is probably the better movie. That is, in terms of it having a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And I guess I'm kind of already spoiling it, but I'm alluding to the fact that Across the Spider-Verse ends on a cliffhanger. I guess the last thing I'll say about Into the Spider-Verse, though, is that visually it's going to inspire, it already has, just look at Puss in Boots, but it is going to inspire movies, animated movies in particular, for years to come, and I cannot wait to see more of that. Let's just say that this movie had some very big shoes to fill, and while, I wanted it to keep going, I didn't want it to stop. The fact that my biggest nitpick with Across the Spider-Verse is the fact that it stops. The fact that the movie just ends. No, it doesn't even end, it just stops. I kind of needed to get that out of the way, just up front, because they didn't tell us that this movie was going to be a two-parter. I going into it, I kind of was thinking, okay, well, there's no way they just make 2 of these and stop, but I wasn't expecting a friggin' cliffhanger. I think you're gonna hear a lot of people saying that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is the closest thing to reading an actual comic book without actually reading an actual comic book. And to start, not that it's a competition, and it doesn't need to be, but the visuals do top the first movie. And this isn't just some visually striking movie that has a lot of details and things that you'll miss. It does have those things, but not in a way that, it's just for the sake of having a lot of things on the screen. Every detail, every art style is important, and not just in terms of the visuals, but story elements, the jokes, the setups and the payoffs. Every piece of this puzzle fits so perfectly together. Imagine if Lego came out with the greatest set they had ever come out with, but they only gave you half the pieces. That's what it's like watching Across the Spider-Verse. I don't know how many of you watching have been keeping up with the newer Spider-Man comics. I haven't read every issue. I've read a few. And it's funny, it's good stuff. I just hear that a lot of people have been very disappointed with, the way that Marvel has been marketing this particular comic run, with the whole "what did Peter do" thing. and I hear that it's been pretty disappointing, which is kind of why I've been staying away from the comics a little bit. You know, I'll pick up an issue every now and again, and Zeb Wells is actually a really funny writer, but I've been more interested to find out what Miles did, because that initial trailer for Across the Spider-Verse, it raises a really interesting question, and you know, a question that makes you want to see the movie to find out what happened. You know, it's just a really good hook, and I think finding out what Miles did and why all of those spider people are chasing after him, I think it's a really good, you know, reason. I think he's got a pretty good reason to go against them, and yeah, I think that pays off a little bit better than the comics. So if you were disappointed by what Peter did or didn't do in the comics, I think this will be like a fresh glass of water, a nice palate cleanser, because the stakes are high. You know, I think you can kind of see the direction the movie's going in, with some of the dialogue and some of the foreshadowing. It's not too subtle, but this is the perfect combination of big spectacle and more personal character drama. Also, the movie is just really, really funny. I remember when the first one was coming out, I heard that Phil Lord and Chris Miller were attached to the project, and that immediately got me excited. You know, the Lego Movie, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 21 and 22 Jump Street. When Phil Lord and Chris Miller were directing movies, they did not miss. They've recently stepped into more of a writer-producer role, and I think that's really benefiting them because they can write projects with new and upcoming directors that they can kind of put under their wing and really push forward in terms of, you know, finding new filmmakers to tell stories. If I'm ever watching a modern television show or movie and I'm wondering to myself, why is this so funny, or why is this so sharply written? Chances are I'm going to see Phil Lord and Christopher Miller's names in the credits at some point. And Across the Spider-Verse is no exception. Shameik Moore does a fantastic job as a Miles who's a little older, and he's clearly getting into a good groove with being Spider-Man, so he's getting a little cocky, and he's got a lot of great quips in there. And getting Jason Schwartzman to play the villain, you know, playing the Spot, you know, a villain that nobody ever really thinks about, but the way that they spin his character isn't just interesting, but it's also really, really funny. And I think you're gonna laugh a lot when you see the movie. And in no way is the movie ever going for anything dark or grim, but I will say that the way they visualize some of the villains does get a little not scary, but, you know, menacing, actually menacing and intimidating. It's really tough to kind of put a stamp on it, considering the fact that this is technically only the first half of a movie. But in terms of it being, you know, its own thing, I think the performances are great. Visually, you're not going to get anything like it, you know, and the pacing in particular is something that I have to praise. What I look for in my action movies isn't just for spectacle. I want the action to drive the story and be part of what's going on. I don't want it to just be icing on top. I'm not just trying to, it's not like the Phantom Menace where you're just trying to get through the whole movie just to get to the Darth Maul fight at the end. And when I say action, I don't mean the fighting. I mean, the fighting is fantastic, you know, it's great getting to see Miles know what he's doing a little bit more than just kind of accidentally winning or surviving, you know, a battle. The actions that the characters make, the choices that they make, they have consequences. Because while, yes, it is very exciting to see Miles, Peter, and Gwen again, the reality of the matter is that they are going to make choices in this movie that you might not agree with. And that's what I really love about this movie, is that it doesn't hold your hand, it doesn't talk down to you, it really grows up with its audience, and I think that's kind of a little bit what the big problem with the MCU has been recently. A lot of people have been thinking, oh, there's Marvel fatigue, and the Marvel movies suck now, you know, and yeah, you know, maybe they're not as as amazing as they used to be, but I think with Across the Spider-Verse, and especially Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the direction that Marvel movies should be heading in is that they should be growing up with their audience. And I don't mean that in terms of having a lot more swearing and gore and violence in there. I just mean creating characters and writing characters in a way that feels mature and respectful to the character. Because, I mean, just look at the Harry Potter franchise. Not only did those movies have to grow up with the actors, but the way they shot those films, the way they presented those stories, shifted significantly throughout the franchise, and I think that's what Marvel needs to do. You know, because after Endgame, it feels like, you know, every Marvel movie now, especially Quantumania, needs to be this big, you know, and a lot of Marvel movies have already had the big bombastic third act, you know, where there's a big battle, but it feels like most movies, I mean, hell, even the new Transformers movie, some of the trailers to that kind of look like Endgame. However, if you want a movie that doesn't feel like Endgame and straight up just doesn't feel like any other movie you'll probably watch this year, just watch Across the Spider-Verse. It's amazing, it's funny, it'll make you laugh and cry, and yeah, it's half of a full package. I think when the second half, Beyond the Spider-Verse, comes out, it's gonna be, let's just say it'll probably be the most delicious pizza I ever eat with my own eyeballs. But those are just my day one thoughts. I'm obviously going to rewatch this movie countless times, and I'm sure I'll pick up on a bunch of details that I missed the first time. There are elements from this movie that reinforce elements from the first movie, and that's what any great sequel should do. But, you know, you should go see it, you know, form your own opinions. Let me know what you thought if anybody's watching this, and yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing, but if you want to hear more of my thoughts, I hope I can make more videos on this channel, so have a great day.